What's up? What's up? What's up? Coach Bruce is back in the studio today for a second time because I was not paying attention. I didn't check my audio to make sure that my audio was coming in hot. So I just talked for 10 minutes with nobody listening, which may be the case most of the time, but that's okay. I am chalking up to a lesson and I'm going to try to make sure to be more careful in the future. And also, I know what I want to talk about today now because I already talked about it. So today I want to talk about perception in ADHD relationships. This is a an enormously important part of communicating in an ADHD relationship. And when I say that, I'm talking about relationships whenever there are at least two ADHD parties. Um, there may also be like autism or other neurodiversity in the mix, but like in my specific case, we have two ADHD diagnosed people, my wife and I, and some curiosities about autism on the spectrum for both of us. So, um, this is something that this is a continual struggle for me. This is something that I'm still continually trying to grow and work on because I have a tendency to think that I am the one who knows best in the situation, in all situations. I've found that self awareness is a huge key whenever it comes to communication. The being able to humble yourself and take responsibility for the fact that you are not always right. Take accountability for the things that you've done wrong in the past, and that was something I didn't always have a very good hold of. That's not something that was modeled very well for me uh, in my childhood. So it's something I didn't like really understand growing up. But as I became an adult and I wanted to do better, it's something that I needed to figure out. So I'm still trying to figure it out, but I think it's really important to understand that as perceptions differ, it's more important to acknowledge the perception and try to change the perception whenever you're dealing with close loved ones and spouses. Like this is not something that applies to the world at large. The perception of the world at large of you should matter minimally as long as you are growing in the way that you want to grow. Um, if you are being self-aware of what you are actually doing and what's important to you, then the perception of people that don't matter to you shouldn't matter. So that's there. But in this particular situation of your spousal relationship or close emotional relationships, perception is important because if you are perceived as being controlling or not caring about somebody's opinion on a thing or not being perceived as being overly emotional, these are things that you want to address and you want to be able to address those perceptions because you want the people who care about you to see you as the person that you are and that you want to be. And if you are not a person who is highly emotional, has volatile emotions, can get angry easily, then you need to ask yourself, why does this person see me that way? Why does this person perceive that I'm this way? What truth could there be that has brought them to this conclusion? Is there something that I have done? And this is not about blame. This is about trying to trace evidential truth. Like, is there some kernel of truth that you can find that maybe has led to this perception on the other person's part? And if there is, then you want to try to manage that thing in a way that, okay, so I'm seen as having a hair trigger, and I don't think that I do, but there was a time, 3 years ago, whenever this small thing, well, what seemed small to my spouse, set me off, and I went into a rage. This is theoretical, but in that situation, maybe it wasn't a small thing. Maybe it seemed really small, but actually, the thing that set me off was a loud banging noise that my wife had made and thought it was funny. But what she doesn't know is that I was Um, I was in a drive by when I was a kid, and it threw me into a little bit of a panic attack, and I got mad because it felt like she was laughing at me, and I blew up. But I never told her any of those things. I just told her that I wasn't that, I wasn't mad, and I got over it, whatever. I never addressed the fact of where that anger actually came from. So no, I don't have a hair trigger. That one thing just set me off really easily because there was previous trauma there. Okay, so that perception is coming out of a real place. It came from a thing that actually happened that I never explained, that I never addressed and dealt with. So her fear that I'm gonna, go off on her at the drop of a hat is valid. So the way to move forward in that is to address what happened, give the full story, be honest, be vulnerable, and say this is why that thing happened. I don't generally I get angry that easy, do I? But in this situation, it did, and I could see how that maybe like scarred you some and made you feel like I am going to get upset at you if you tell me this, or that. Um, so moving forward, I want you to know that like I'm not going to get angry at you for doing something like this, thing, whatever. And I hope that moving forward you can see that that was a pretty isolated incident, and I really like I'm pretty well in control of my emotions, and I've also dealt with some of the trauma from that instance, and that's what has been able to bring me to talk to about it now, because I realized that I'd kind of kept that from you, and I want to make sure that you understand and know, why that's like why something like that would happen. Doesn't It's not an excuse. Doesn't doesn't make it okay for me to blow up that way. But I wanted you to understand that that's not going to happen every time you make a loud noise or tell me something I don't like or whatever. So that's all just an example, but I think that kind of helps to highlight how someone's perception could be valid, even though like it's not representative of who you actually are. But that in order to get that information, you have to be willing to let down your guard and stop telling yourself how the other person is so wrong for thinking you are something that you're not. This is obviously somebody that you love. If there's somebody that you love and you care to move the relationship forward, take it upon yourself to let go of the high ground or whatever you feel like you have by keeping yourself protected and being vulnerable and say, okay, how can I change this perception? Where is it coming from? How can I address it in a way that's going to help us grow closer and move forward? Because that should be our goal whenever we're having um, discussions in our relationships. We want to, you know, face an obstacle that is preventing our growth as a couple. We ideally want to face it together and figure out how as a couple we can scale that obstacle and and hopefully leave it behind us, versus using the obstacle as a weapon that you are hurling at your spouse. That is not going to help the overall growth of the couple, right? So perception is not always reality, but in the perception there might be some truth that will help you get to a better reality sooner. So yeah, that's the general to and fro I want to talk about today. And if you're struggling to have communication with your spouse, um, we often speak really different languages. Like my ADHD language speaks to my wife's very, very differently. And until we started to work on our communication, the basis of how we communicated, like what we were trying to gain from our communication, we were not getting very far. Once we started to develop a goal together, what we wanted to happen when we communicated, it really changed the way our conversations went. And I've defined how you need to take the steps to be the person that is able to have those conversations in my 9 steps for the ADHD dad to radically improve communication course that you can get that at www.authenticidentitymanagement. Uh, Dang it, I forgot again. See, I know that I am not good at remembering stuff, so I should have had that pulled up already. Dang it. So for that, I've got the 9 steps for the ADHD dad to radically improve communication. And you can get that at www.authenticidentymanagementcom/9 steps hyphen special offer. And that is going to drastically help you uh, kind of have the same codex in which you try to figure out what you're trying to derive from your communications. And I think it's really important to do that. So check that out. It's a very, very good deal, and I think that it will help you a lot. That is it for me today. Keeping it short, getting back to getting some work done. Be yourself and love yourself. I will talk to you again soon.